All right, let's get started. The topic of our panel discussion is accelerating COVID-19 business recovery for banks with IoT analytics. Our expert panelists can share their experience, lessons learned, and best practices from working in and through the new normal landscape that is the finance industry today. So let's go ahead and meet them. First, we have Mr. Sankha Ghosh. Sankha is the Executive Vice President and Global CIO for MoneyMart Financial Services. He is responsible for technology transformation and digitalization of the enterprise. He brings over 25 years of IT leadership experience in the areas of enterprise data management, analytics, process automation, artificial intelligence and machine language, and also consumer and commercial lending platform implementations. Prior to MoneyMart, Sankha held several CIO and leadership positions at General Electric and Synchrony Financial. Our other panelist is Mr. Suman Mahalanabis. Suman leads product management for digital software and solutions within TCS, performing leadership roles in product development, solution design, consulting and delivery of analytics and customer engagement solutions, including banking, financial services, retail, communications, and smart cities. Gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Doug.
Let's take a look at being prepared for whatever's coming next. To prepare for future crises, how can predictive and prescriptive analytics help banks and financial institutions foresee new risks and mitigate impacts on business and customers? Sankha?
Thank you, Doug. A really great question, right? So I would start off saying that we probably, the entire world should have listened to Bill Gates. So when he said in 2015 that the next big crisis is going to be a pandemic and the world is not ready for it. I don't know how he predicted it. He's really smart, but I'm sure he knew things that none of us, obviously, nobody in the world knew about, right? I think he just yesterday said that this is going to last at least till the end of 2022. So we should really take him seriously. And what that means is we got to start preparing ourselves for to be in this long haul. And, this is going to be a new normal and, it's going to stay with us for a while. And I think the longer it stays with us, it's going to change permanently how the customer behaviors, how businesses were being done before and will be done 2 years from now or 2.5 years from now, right? So I think, some of the things, and I'll tell you just from my company's perspective, at MoneyMart, we are doing everything with a digital-first mentality, right? I mean, in pre-COVID, we had certain things in place. We did not have everything. We did not have all our products enabled through our digital channels. We were not an omni-channel company, but as we look at how the world has changed, we need to be the digital company, right? So if something like this happens and there's another lockdown or whatever, that customers still have a way to transact with us, right, or get the help that they need. And we need to work these solutions work seamlessly. It needs to be, the customers need to have a very frictionless experience, right? The immediacy for our customer base is really, really critical. If you think about our customer base, they really need money when they need, We just can't tell them like a large bank, okay, yeah, you need money, come back after 7 days. Well, it's not going to work for them. They need money then. They're probably fighting a health crisis, or they probably need something to help somebody in a different country, their family member, right? So it's you talked about being empathetic, right? That's exactly what we need to do, for our customers. We need to understand what they need. We need to put ourselves in their shoes and create capabilities and services that is going to help them, right? So that's what our focus is, keeping customer first in mind, right? We need to build new AI solutions, have better data management capabilities that's more real time in nature. And enabling that touchless experience for our customers, right? That's what we are focusing on. We are utilizing the customer data and identifying patterns to eliminate variances between our retail and our digital channels. Today, we have different processes, different procedures in terms of how a customer works with us in a retail channel, just because, we see the customer in front of you, how we do KYC, the types of questions we can ask them and whatnot, is different than when you have nobody and you're interacting with a web page or a tablet or a mobile device, right? It's going to be different. So how do we create that conversational kind of an experience for our customers? There are customers, and a large chunk of our customers love going to the stores, love interacting with our store agents, because you know why? Because they're part of the community. We do a lot of community work, and our agents come from the same communities. They know each other. They know their kids. They go to the same schools. And it becomes important for some of our customers to have that type of a relationship. How do we give them that in the digital channel, right? So we need to think long and hard. It just cannot be a machine giving them messages, 404 error. Well, that doesn't work for our customers, right? We got to really, really think hard in terms of how we do that, right? So replacing that interaction with a human being at the store is probably the biggest challenge that we need to overcome for our business, right? To keep that customer stickiness, to enable the customers to do more and more with us, right? I think that is going to be the differentiating factors, right? And as I said, suppliers are critical to our success. Not all of the solutions that I'm talking about, whether it's data and analytics, it's available. It's not like, okay, I can buy something from somebody. A lot of this will have to be developed, will have to be tested. And, working with our key suppliers and vendors jointly, solving for these use cases will be really, really critical for our business at MoneyMark, right?
Right, absolutely, Shankha. Especially, your point of really providing that physical experience on a digital channel. That's really it's almost like the Holy Grail, right? How do we really get to a solution which can translate that kind of an experience? So that's definitely important. And some other points, Doug, if I'm to talk about on the risk side, right? One part is traditionally, if you look at pre-COVID, most of the operational risk and business continuity planning used to be center-based. And we would have different center of operations. If one center goes down, I already have another center to pick up the operation. But in a global scenario where almost all of your employees are equally at risk, how do you really do business continuity planning? So the traditional concepts of operational risk planning have to be completely relooked. And that is something of a challenge that we started with when we started working with customers, that the concept of risk now really needs to be granular, much lower than centers, right down at a level of individual employees, because each employee, it's very important to ensure their health and safety. At the same time, the risk that they carry bubbles up across all the levels of operations. It can be my BAU operation, it can be my strategic operation, it can be my front office. It translates back to customers also. It's not just about the employee risk, but also the risk to customers. And that risk often translates into the lending book or the loan book that the financial institution carries, because their industry, each industry is exposed very differently to the kind of pandemic that is there. And so therefore, their ability to pay, their ability in terms of the cash flow and smoothing out cash flows, all those challenges are very different. So understanding risk at a more granular level, starting with individual level of risk, be it employees, be it customers, and how that overlays with operations, both from your product operations as well as from your market operations, becomes very important. And that is where your true concept of operational risk resilience needs to be relooked, where not just the traditional risk frameworks, but now risk is more dynamic. Things are changing. If you see, if you take countries in Europe and UK, they were doing pretty fine about like 2 weeks back. But just in a week's time, suddenly UK is having a second wave coming, right? And they're now talking of lockdown. So things are very dynamic. Things are changing rapidly. So the whole concept of risk prediction, risk scenario building, it has to be a way shorter in frequency. Like we are doing currently for some of our customers, daily risk monitoring and risk projection at shorter periods of 7 days. How does it change in 14 days? How does it change in 21 days? Because that's the dynamism that is there in the market now. So that's one point. Secondly, if you really look at, while it's good to say risk and scenarios, there's no precedence to COVID, right? You can't apply an algorithm or model to how it will play out. I mean, everybody had been trying to do that for 6.5 months. And, earlier, the dates are changing, right? It's a moving target. So in lack of such a precedence, how do you really look into advanced analytics like new techniques of agent-driven simulation? How can you really apply those and build your scenarios? And there you look into how you're, for example, stress testing against different scenarios. How would you build those scenarios when there's no precedence? That's where these kind of techniques in terms of new simulation techniques, that really helps. Second part is, while you do that, how would you approach your sensitivity analysis? How would you look into more real-time view of risk as it changes dynamically by various of these scenarios? And more importantly, it's a multi-actor environment, right? We're not really operating in an organizational context only when it comes to pandemic. It's a multi-actor scenario where as geographies are getting exposed differently, your different customers, be it from SME perspective or from your corporate lending perspective, are getting exposed very differently. So how do you adjust around that? It's very important. So that's one key learning that we saw, and one learning that we have brought into our product is how really do you do agent-based simulation modeling to really account for scenarios where there's no precedence. So that's one. And other case we are seeing is, in a distributed working environment, the whole concept of fraud and financial crime is changing drastically. Our customers are also exposed to that. So how do we really look into different anomaly patterns that are emerging? How do we really marry behavior into anomaly patterns? Look into group anomaly, look into trending anomalies, look into non-occurrence of events which would otherwise be together. Like if you take a home mortgage, a registration fee should always be there, but if it's not there, maybe that's an anomalous transaction. So how do you really detect such patterns and really look at new patterns that are emerging, and more importantly, loop it back through a reinforcement learning approach where you're constantly learning from the scenario, because you started with a simulation model. Now that you're there, you need to really constantly learn around it and improve as we go along. So these are some of the techniques which I think traditional risk modeling really completely needs to be relooked. A lot of this needs to be more granular, as we talked about, but while we are more granular, it needs to be more macro in our data consideration, because it's not just enterprise data. You have to look into your pandemic data, you have to look into your industry impacts that are there for your customers, and then come up with a risk model which really takes care of that. So these are some of the new risks that we see. Of course, the risk is there from an operational perspective, but also in terms of fraud, financial crime, cybersecurity.
Very good. Thank you, Sankha and Suman, for sharing your knowledge and observations. So to gain more insight, visit dss.tcs.com.